Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
The Motor Dream podcast is recorded on Camaragal land of the Eora Nation. It always was and always will be the lands of the First Nations of Australia.
This is the Motor Dream Podcast.
Hello, fellow listener, and welcome to episode 24 of the Motor Dream Podcast. Connor McNally with you, and this is the podcast where we can dream just a little about what our dream garage would be if money was no issue whatsoever. Well, what a way to start the second season. My chat with Bridget Bell really did resonate with a number of people, especially from those out in Western Australia. I'm glad you enjoyed the episode, and it was great to appreciate the impact that Bridget has made in the industry, not just in the motorsport side of things, but also in the broader motoring trade. I'm pleased to say that we're going to keep the Golden West trend going with my upcoming guest, a championship winning one at that, so hang tight for a minute or two. But before we begin, as always, here's a quick reminder about what this is all about, especially for our new listeners. Welcome, by the way. I tell my guests that one day they wake up to discover that they've received a text telling them they need to check their bank balance. They open up the bank app and they suddenly discover that they're instant billionaires. As soon as they discover their newfound fortune, they get an email from this mystery benefactor that tells them that they can spend anything that they like and buy any car, bike or machine that they want. But there is a catch. They're only allowed 3 cars, bikes or machines in their dream garage. Sounds easy in theory, but trust me, it is not. Now, we've had a great array of guests from within the motoring and motorsport landscape so far in this podcast, along with the occasional celebrity, and there are plans to have a few more to come in future episodes. But we've yet to have a championship-winning driver or rider appear as a guest. Until now. Of course, we've had Todd Hazelwood appear on this podcast as a previous guest, but that was before he went on to win the Bathurst 1000 and the Trans Am National Series last year. But an idea came to mind near the end of 2024 about potentially interviewing some of our champions from the motorsport season just gone. So when I reached out to my upcoming guest just before Christmas if he would be keen to come on, he literally said yes before I could finish sending the message. And there was a really good reason for why he said yes. A few weeks prior, on the streets of Adelaide, he wrapped up his maiden Tyrepower V8 SuperUtes Series championship, having come agonisingly close in 2023. Having been one of 4 drivers with a mathematical chance of winning, he claimed the title with a clean sweep of race wins to leapfrog ahead of Cameron Crick, Aaron Borg and Dave Cedars in the final standings. His title win was definitely one of the feel-good stories of Australian motorsport last year, and one that was richly deserved. If you haven't guessed who my guest is, well, I'm pleased to say that it's Adam Marjoram. Born and bred in Perth, Western Australia, Adam literally grew up with motorsport running through his veins. With the loving support of his father and his family, Adam got into karting at a very young age. After winning a number of state titles and competing at the highest level in both junior and senior level of karting, Marjoram made the jump to circuit racing in 2011, taking the unusual approach of starting out in saloon cars. It only took him 3 meetings to make a big impression, because by the end of that year, he would be given an opportunity to drive a Porsche GT3 Cup car for Michael Patrese. An outright win in that year's Wanneroo 300 with Patrese would lead to a full season in the Porsche Sprint Challenge in 2012, where he would finish 6th overall. That would lead to a one-off guest drive in the V8 Utes that same year for Auto 1, a guest drive that would lead to a full-time opportunity with the automotive aftermarket brand and carry across into his ultimate dream of racing in supercars and in the highly competitive Super 2 class for Erebus Motorsport, and then for Matt Stone Racing, and finally at Image Racing. When Auto 1 decided to end supporting Marjoram at the end of 2018, the West Aussie continued on for one more season in Penrite colours before calling time on his career at the end of 2019. It was an announcement that surprised many within the sport, and for a while he would quietly disappear into the corporate life as a franchisee for his former sponsor, Auto 1. But the world has a funny way of turning things around when you least expect it. In late 2022, a chance phone call from Craig Doddas to do a guest drive in the V8 SuperUtes Series turned into a full-time opportunity for Cedar's racing team in 2023, culminating in his first national motorsport title when he claimed the 2024 SuperUtes crown on the streets of Adelaide. He heads into the 2025 championship season, commencing this weekend at Sydney Motorsport Park, supporting the opening round of the Repco Supercars Championship, carrying the number 1 plate for the first time in his career, and his main goal is to go back-to-back. So it gives me great joy and a pleasure to welcome Adam Marjoram to the Motor Dream Podcast. The 2024 V8 SuperUtes champion, Adam Marjoram, welcome to the Motor Dream Podcast. It's great to have you on, and congratulations on winning the championship.
Thanks, mate. No, really, really cool to come on and chat a little bit. And it's been a couple of weeks now, or a few weeks now, and I still can't believe it. You know, the amount of messages I'm still getting and notifications, and even at work as well, people popping in and saying congratulations. It's a dream come true, and still pinching myself, that's for sure.
I can only imagine that you're still, I guess, trying to answer all the messages that you've been getting since you won the championship in Adelaide, because you came into the final round with an equal chance of winning it with Aaron Borg and, of course, Cameron Crick, who I guess had it all in front of him to win the championship. You had a pretty bad round at Mount Panorama at the Bathurst 1000, and then Aaron Borg had a bad round, so it evened everything out. But in the end, you got the results, and I kind of get the feeling that you still haven't got over the madness of what happened on the streets of Adelaide.
Yeah, look, I mean, championship picture, obviously it just was so rapidly changing over the year, where we were second, first. Like, it was just, there was so much going on. And then Adelaide itself, I prepared really, really hard for 2 weeks. I was putting in 5 hours worth of study every night, because I figure, learning from 2023, we won the Gold Coast 500 there, and it just wasn't quite enough to clinch the championship, and that hurt a lot. So I used that kind of hurt as fuel for this year. And Adelaide was weird with a clean sweep, and we just had so much pace to burn. It was fantastic. The guys did such a good job on the car. Obviously, I was well prepared. My engineer, Harry, I had 2 engineers this year, with Cliffy, my long-term engineer, and Harry, and his passion and thoroughness was awesome. So to do that together, and then clean sweep the weekend, but that race 2 reverse grid, where I don't like to call it the Stephen Bradbury, where I started 8th, got to 4th, and then everyone crashed out in front of me, and we kind of Stephen Bradbury.
I'm sure he would I'm sure he gets a kick out of everyone saying, "Oh, I've done a Bradbury." So,
yeah. And then it was really, really funny. My data engineer, right? So he's like, "Mate, you literally Stephen Bradbury that." And I was like, I know, like, I don't know how this happened. I came across the line. I'm going, I'm on the radio to my engineer going, "Did that just happen? Like, did I do something wrong? Like, the seas parted." And I just went through, and he's like, "You know, the funny, ironic bit about it, Stephen Bradbury literally lives a block behind me." I'm like, "You got to go tell him."
Well, I'm trying to get him on the pod, because I know he loves his motorsport. He does have a CAMS license, so I want to try and get him on. And Steve, if you are listening, I am trying to reach out to you. We'd love to have you on to have a chat about cars, other than your Bradbury moment. But I guess, yeah, clean sweep from Adelaide, and then Cameron Crick obviously having a horrible weekend on the streets of Adelaide. I guess it topped off, what has been a very, very up and down trajectory of your career, because it was well known back in around 2016, 2017, you announced your retirement from Super 2, you stepped away from racing for a little bit, and then you came back to do the V8 Utes, and last year, of course, you just fell short to win the title. How does it feel now, after all the trials and tribulations of trying to make it in supercars, trying to make it in Porsches as well, and we'll talk a bit about that, but to get that first championship trophy after all this time, it must still feel a surreal sense of accomplishment after all this time.
It's not been an easy road the whole time. I don't come from huge backing where you can just keep going and going and going and going. You got to work really, really hard. And I was lucky with Auto One and Panright, Racebez, all these really great companies, Tried and Nova, that supported my career the whole time. And I guess, we came close to winning the championship in 2015 and the last year that I did Utes with Erebus. And, we ended up fourth, but not through, I guess, my own doing. It was a bit of bad luck at the old Homebush track at the Sydney 500. So I guess to do that, to make the decision to retire was very emotional. I still remember that day very, very well. And it was a very hard decision, and maybe not so much on the racing, but from all the support. It's really unique being in this position in motorsport where I'm so thankful and lucky to have a lot of following people that follow what we do, and to know that maybe I couldn't go redo those memories again was really emotional. And as the first time I've ever seen my dad cry, I don't get emotional too often, but definitely shed a few tears. And then to get a phone call in 2022 from Craig Dontis where he'd hurt his thumb and his wrist, I thought he actually pocket dialed me because, with Adam Marjoram obviously sits at the top of the phone book contact. So to get a phone call out of nowhere, he was my teammate in 2015, and I hadn't chatted to him properly for 2 or so years, really since the start of COVID. And to come back, race at the Bend, to then do well at the Bend, get on pole, win on debut, and then kind of start this trajectory again, and then to have it accumulate in the championship. It's something. 2 years ago, I genuinely never thought I'd race a race car again. I never thought, whether it's a barbecue, I don't own race cars. I never had the opportunity to race other people's stuff. To then have it kind of do the 180 and then all of a sudden race a car again, and then miss it because I didn't get to finish the 2022 season, and then get thrown back into it and then win the champion. The roller coaster ride that is, you couldn't script it. And 2 years ago, I never thought I'd win a championship. Never thought I'd be in Utes. Never thought I'd clean sweep weekend or even race a car again. I'm just, it's awesome.
It feels like a Cole Trickle moment from Days of Thunder when he loses his drive, he smashes into Russ Wheeler, loses his drive, he's pondering, what do I do now? Lost my girlfriend, what do I do? And then he just come back and you win everything. I love that story. It is an Hollywood script in some respects, but I love the fact that you've come back into a category that when it had that transition from being the V8 Utes back in 2015-16, and then it went the Super Utes route where they had originally the diesel engines, and it just didn't resonate with the audience. And I remember how, I guess, dejecting it was for those that really stuck with the product. But then the switch to the V8 motors have really transformed the category. And we had Philippa Guana, who's the category manager for V8 Super Utes, during our first season of the pod. And she said the reason why people were loving the category is that it relates to the everyday people, and people want to come and race these cars. You're one of those people, and as I said, as you said before, you came out of retirement to jump back into the Utes, and you're really enjoying your racing again. Why is V8 Utes so good right now?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. Obviously the fans affectionately used to call the diesel era the toilet break category, right? And
that's true, actually.
I was the same, right? So when I was racing Super 2, we'd be in our transporter and, we're at our engineering debrief, and we'd have, the Foxtel on, and we'd have timing up. And as soon as Utes used to come on, we would actually start doing our work. So 100%. And obviously the V8 transplant, everything was such a key thing to do. You dumped them on their bums. You got a control shock, you got a control brake package, a control engine. They're all built the exact same. They're putting out, compared to the old V8 Utes, they used to put out about 400 horsepower. These are 500 plus. They're actually they're super quick. They're a lot quicker around Bathurst or at any track we go to. And when I came back at the Bend on debut, everybody still thought they had diesels. And it was a weird thing for me because I guess I've come back and it's my first time driving the car, experiencing the category, coming out of COVID, like all of these nuanced kind of circumstances. And it was starting to find its feet. And it was the first time that I'd really had anything to do with Philippa. And I guess when I said yes to coming back for 2023 with Craig inviting me back as a full-time driver, I could see the trajectory. It was right in its formative stages. It was only just starting to happen, and I could see where it was going to go. And I'm like, well, absolutely, I want to hitch my wagon to this. And it's evolved. The cars have evolved. There's now a lot more parity. So last year when I was in the Triton, my car was one of the oldest in the category. I had absolutely nothing. Like, it was just, the car wasn't there. And with the parity adjustments, with Pace Innovations, with Luke, with everybody involved in that, the cars are equal. Like, the D-Max, we are, well, around Bathurst, because that was such a good car in 2023, they're wound back. So around Bathurst, me and Borgie calculated, we're only 100% throttle for 15 meters around Mount Panorama.
Really? Wow.
So the parity is quite there. The racing is good. The top 10 drivers and top 15 drivers are very, very good drivers. They've come from different categories, whether it's the old Utes, whether it's coming back from Sub 2. You look at like Cricky, he's raced main game. And you got this, Borgie's won the championship 2 times. You've got Ryle Harris. You've got so many good drivers now, guys coming through. Cody Brzezinski kept me honest at Darwin, at Adelaide. Like, these kind of guys are putting on good racing. The cars are such a good race car. And where, we were talking a bit about this before we actually jumped on, is, the old cars were good with the crashing and the bashing. And it was because when you made a move, if you made a mistake, you lock a tire, you'd carry that mistake into the other guy, and they'd go, oh, it's crash and bash, and all the fans love that stuff. But now there's more consistency in what you do. The cars are better, so you can get more aggressive. And that Stephen Bradbury race at Adelaide was a perfect, example of that, where, Ryle stuck it up the inside of Jaden Wanzak, bit of side-to-side bustle. They went around through turn 10 and turned each other around and started T-boning, straightened them back out, put them in the wall. Then there was an over and under here, and then these two hit each other, and then I come through because it was all nose to tail. And like, that is the way it is, because it's just aggressive racing, because the cars can now support it. And you've got the level of drivers. So now everybody knows there's V8s in them. I'll be doing a pit tour with, Motion or Mothers or IOTI or any of my sponsors, and I'll have 10, 15 people there. And then the fans walking by just want to know what's going on. And they hang out for the whole pit tour. So you start with like 10 people and you end up with like 40. And that, to me, that just speaks volumes for what the categories achieved with Luke and Philippa, and the growth of it. It's such a good category for people to come through, and then for people to come back, and then for people to start with, and then there's a couple of gentleman drivers in there, and it's a really good mix of people, and it's the best family that you could genuinely ask for. It's such a credit to everybody involved. It's a reflection from inside out. It's fantastic.
It's a far cry from the very first Ute race, which happened at Adelaide way back in 2001, and they were literally stock standard brakes, standard everything. And I think I remember Grant Denyer, he crashed in that very first race, final turn, had no brakes, the brake pads had just popped out of the calipers, and he just went straight head first into the tyre wall at the final corner. So you don't see those kind of things happening in the current spec of Utes, but I guess the only common ground they have is they're both production-based, but they're so different, aren't they?
100%. Like, even, you go back to the old Brute Utes, V8 Utes days, like the evolution of those cars were huge, and then they were going to evolve again to the Ute of the future to go a bit more NASCAR-y, and that was really, really exciting. So I think they launched that concept in 2013, and obviously never came to fruition, but that would have been a really cool, growth and transition to where we are today. And obviously the market relevance of dual cabs and all of that is fantastic. When you actually talk ride height, these cars have the same ride height as the old Utes, and people still think they're quite high because they look big on track. But when you stand next to it, they come up to my chin. So they're really quite low there. They've done a really good job in producing this race car package that, you can use it to develop the way you approach the brakes. The old Utes had a booster in it. You couldn't really apply the brakes in the same way as any other road car, but a race car. But these cars here are literally kitted out to be a proper race car. Obviously production-based spec, but everything's transferable. If you're trying to use it as a stepping stone to Super 2 from Toyota 86s or Formula Ford or state level racing or whatever, it's actually really, really good, because obviously the body of the car is big. That's why they look so big. So sponsorship, branding and all that is is perfect because you've got such a big logo area.
Yeah.
But then you're not compromising on the driver's side because, like, when you're racing against guys like Cricky, you saw how well he actually did at the Bathurst 1000 and all the Enduros, and you know he's a good driver and he's proved in different categories. I guess I've been in different categories and been at the pointy end, and Borgie, Ryle, like all these guys, you've got a really good benchmark. If you can be up, like Cody Brzezinski, it's probably for me one of the stands out consistently. Like, he was right up with us all year. If he goes to Super 2, if he goes to another category, Carrera Cup, you know that he's going to do half okay because he's kind of proved it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really good. So the evolutionist category is bang on for the driver. It's bang on for the commercial side. It's bang on for the fans. It just literally ticks every single box, which is perfect. That's what you want out of a category.
And let's not forget, we've got a couple of women drivers in there as well, with Holly Espray and of course Alexandra Betts, and her brother Zach, of course, is a Super 2 champion in his own right. So you've got some really talented drivers in that field, and across all different talent levels, but they're all very competitive, and it's very marketable. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's back to what the fans want. It's hard racing. The cars look good. They're well presented. You got a mix of people in there. And it literally, as I said, it just ticks every single box. And even from a driver point of view, the most fun I've ever had racing in my whole career, from karting all the way through, is absolutely this category, because you can't hide. If you don't win, or you're not doing well, or you're not where you want to be, the only person you've got to blame is yourself. The setup is so controlled. The engines are controlled. You don't have, Walkinshaw and Tickford engines. You don't have any of this stuff. They're all the same car, essentially, with their different chassis and their different body shapes, but they're paratized to all be the same. So you have to look inwards, and that's what I really like about it, because from a driving point of view, I don't want to have an excuse. I want to know, if I'm not performing, how do I get better? Because the easiest thing to fix is yourself. And the hardest thing to fix is stuff not in your control. So I figure, well, I'd rather look inwards and outwards, and it ticks the box there. And yeah, I'm so passionate about this category, and have been since 2022, when I kind of learned more about it and got to drive it. And it's going to go a lot of places. I think, next year's calendar is shaping up to be very good. I think it's standing with supercars is going places, because we barely had any red. Well, we didn't. I don't think we even had a red flag this year. We didn't have one. Oh, we had one last year. And when you look at all the categories on the support calendar, that's the best ratio out of racing laps to safety car to red flag. V8 SuperUtes, for the aggressive racing and all of that, we had the best on track ratio. So what can't it do?
Exactly. I love your career. I want to touch a bit on your career now. Obviously, we've been talking a fair bit about the Super Utes and your success with Super Utes since you've come back from racing. You started your career at the age of 7. You've won 3 state championships when you were a junior, and then you went on to win state titles on a senior level. In fact, including 2008, where you almost were undefeated the entire season. With all that karting that you did, what did it teach you in terms of your racecraft, in terms of building your skills, and I guess learning about motor racing as a whole, getting to set up a car, making sure that it's perfect, for the different types of conditions, because they change all the time. How did that help you develop as a driver?
I think first and foremostly, because it was Dad and me. Like, everywhere we went around Australia, it was just Dad and me. Whether we're up against factory teams or whatever, it was just Dad and me. So first and foremostly, it taught me to listen to my bloody dad. I hope he's not listening to that.
I'm sure he will, and he'll agree with you. So he'll say to you afterwards, "I told you so."
I'll get this text message after he's listened to it. But it taught me first and foremostly, funny enough, family. Me and my dad are best mates, and out of all of those karting weekends, all of my racing career, he's only missed 3 weekends of racing. And we were, back in the day, we were doing like 35 race weekends a year, and he barely missed it. So I think it taught me that, family matters, relationship matters, right? My father-son relationship, hopefully I get to pass that on to the next generation, because to me, that's the most important. Then when you start to talk from the driving aspect, I guess, I was really lucky that I had quite a successful karting career. And I learned a lot in terms of feedback, so my dad's qualified mechanic, but we're the first generation motorsport, and me and dad would race go-karts together, and he would keep winning, and I probably wasn't doing as well when we first started. And I remember asking him, I was like, hey mate, why do you keep winning trophies as like a 8-year-old or whatever I was? Why do you keep winning and I don't? He said, well, you got to just try harder. And that to me was, funny enough, the one thing I've probably carried through, because at the end of the day, you can make what you want out of anything and out of any situation. You might not be afforded the best opportunities, but looking back and going shoulda, woulda, coulda is something I never ever want to do. And I guess that's where it kind of started. So it taught me obviously to how to unlock the best way to learn. And then it doesn't matter what situation you jumped in, whether you go into a new car, a new track, a new go-kart, a new situation, you learn how to learn, and that is translatable in anything you do in life. So I think racecraft out of karting, it's notoriously hard go-karting, and probably people don't give it credit from the fan point of view of how good the racing is. And I'd say go down to your local kart track and just watch a big race meeting, because it is absolutely the best racing you'll ever see, right? And then you go jump into cars. And I remember doing my first laps ever in a race car were in a saloon car. And here I was, hot shot. What was I, friggin' 15 or something like that? Hot shot little kid winning state championships, on the best and whatnot. And I came out of turn 1 out of Barbagallo, and I was following another guy in a saloon car, and he was showing me the lines and all that. And in a go-kart, you're on the rear axle, so you catch things as they happen really, really quickly. So you pick up, your bum has such a good feeling. In a race car, you're so much further forward. So as something starts to happen, you're sitting here, and the back end can get quite sideways before you actually feel it. And I remember coming out of turn 1, I got on the gas, and it started to get sideways. I didn't know it was getting sideways, and I just looped it. And it was just the slowest, most pathetic loop I've ever done in my life. And it was just so embarrassing. I've got the footage somewhere, and I've watched it back, and I'm like, oh, honey. So,
you must have been kicking yourself. Just you thinking, oh, I've got this. No, I don't. I don't have it at all.
Yeah. It was not until I was facing the wrong direction, I was like, I didn't have that. It was, but it was something that, once you learn that little bit, like that learning was translatable. Like, you jump into that, then you jump into a Porsche. And I jumped into a Porsche only a couple of weeks later and raced that for the first time. And it was such a big change, and I couldn't fit in the seat and all of that. And we ended up, literally, it was race 4 to race weekend, and I'd only done 2 race weekends in the saloon car. Jumped in the Porsche, left-hand drive, sequential, big brakes, bit of aero, all of that kind of stuff. We drove from like 22nd through to 2nd, set the lap record of the day. And it was just literally that karting bit was translatable. Learning how to learn was just so crucial. Like, that's how you kind of swim at the next category.
I want to ask you, the reason you went from karting straight into saloon cars, what was the reason behind that? Because I guess everyone that comes out of karting will go either the Formula Ford route, or they'll do something state level like Formula V, but you decided to go sedan racing and go saloon cars. What was the reason?
Twofold. One, we didn't know anyone. Like, we rocked up, Dad and I, to a club level event, and we're like, oh, they kind of look like a race car. And we literally started talking to someone. And that's literally all there was to it. It was kind of affordable. I didn't stick around very long.
It's interesting because saloon cars, sorry to interrupt, saloon cars in Western Australia are massive. Like, they are like capacity grids at every state and national level event. And sadly, as a national series, they've fallen by the wayside through circumstances out of their control. We won't go into that. But the fact that saloon cars are still very popular in Western Australia, it just boggles my mind how many cars are there in Western Australia and how big the fields are.
100%, and I'm really lucky as well that I keep with my business at Auto and Morley. I actually supply a lot of the guys now that I raced against back in the day with brakes and pads and brake fluid and service gear and oils, and which is really, really cool. I'm quite lucky to have that kind of finger in the pie, and I actually sponsor that category because it does mean a lot to me, even though I wasn't there for long. It was really, really cool because I guess that's where I learned about inertia and body weight transfer and all that. And most people go through Formula Ford because it's closer to a go-kart than a race car. But we didn't know anyone there. And as I said, because Dad and I are first generation, we literally had to find stuff out ourselves. The transition between karting and cars are a lot easier these days than it was back then, especially in WA where we're literally the wait a while state. We're literally keep moving away, like we're just so far away. And the information, the access to everything's just wasn't there. It is a lot better now. But yeah, it was probably the closest we're like, well, you need to learn about all of this stuff. Well, saloon car seems pretty affordable, and we're doing it, just Dad and me, and it fit perfectly with where we were, and it was just lucky that I got offered a Porsche drive in WA. It was literally driver got sick. Guy had followed me through K-Tech Porsche, and the owner Brendan had followed me through karting and knew my name, and then I was probably in the top 5 in saloon cars. He's like, hey, just come and drive this thing. And I remember Dad going, no, you can't do it. No, you can't do it. And I'm begging him going, oh, my God, Dad, it's a Porsche. It's like, oh, come on, let me do it. He's like, I can't afford it. Don't crash it. Like, no, we're not doing it. We can't risk it. I'm going, Dad, I'm not going to crash it. Don't worry. Anyway,
Famous last words. That was
the last word. I'm getting in the car. I'm pulling the seat forward. He's like, Adam, don't crash it. I'm like, that's what I want to hear right now, man, as I'm pulling the seat forward and trying to figure out the belts. And Brendan's like, okay, so this is the radio button, and this is where you pull this back. You've got to be really forceful on the gear stick. Dad's like, don't crash it. Anyway, I think I gave Dad an absolute heart attack. So I came off the line with 22nd. I got to 16th before turn 1. And Dad's like, he's not listened to me at all. So yeah, then it went from there. Obviously, we did the Wanneroo 300, which we should have won, but there was like a little technical thing from another competitor and all that kind of stuff. Into the Michelin Sprint Challenge, and that kind of dovetailed its way through, which was really cool. So very uncharacteristic kind of progression. Yeah, it was weird.
The Sprint Challenge, obviously we know it's a great second tier for what is now Carrera Cup, and it has been that way in the Porsche pyramid for many, many years. We had Courtney Prince on as a guest in the first series, and she talked very positively about learning so much going from a Formula Ford into a Carrera Cup car, doing the Sprint Challenge and just learning the nuances of driving a Porsche. What were the big takeaways for you when you did that full season in the Sprint Challenge? Did you have any idea where you would be going? Did you focus on Carrera Cup, or were you just enjoying the ride?
Bit of both. I've always been a big Porsche fan, just a kid growing up. So my dad has a very old 911 that we used to do like night family trips in, and just really cool stuff. So Porsche has always been a bit close to me. Yeah. And then obviously to race it, and then to go to that level obviously required a lot of learning on my behalf. I'd never really done data before. Because go-karts never had data back then. Saloon cars really didn't have it. So it was my first foray into that kind of stuff. And then I remember at Winton, I was having really bad understeer through turn 1. My engineer said, we've got to replace the front brake pads. And I'm looking at him going, are you on the good stuff? Or like, how do brake pads change turning, man? Like, and it was a really big learning curve, because that to me was, well, you need weight on the nose to turn in, and you're lacking front brake pad efficiency, and it fixed it. And I'm going, wow, I've really got a lot to learn. And that taught me the first fundamentals of, I guess, setup and driving at a proper, when I say proper race car, saloon cars are a production car, and this was, it's a proper race car. So how you look after tires, because they had the Jim Richards endurance races that year, and you look after tyres over a stint, and how to be more consistent. And I was really lucky that I had Stephen Richards was transporting the cars to events, and I could call on him for a bit of advice. Big fanboy moment. I've got him and Mark Winterbottom's shirt up in my wall in my bedroom from when I was a kid. So when I finally got his phone number, I was like, oh my God, I'm too scared to call him. But really, really cool. So I learned a lot about racing in that year in 2012. So it was really, really cool. And then towards the end of 2012, I guess it left me at a bit of a crossroads as what to do, because Malala, once again, don't come from a lot of money. This was a very, very big expense, and my dad put everything in. We had some cool sponsors, but it definitely didn't cover anywhere near half of what it cost. And at Malala, I think I qualified 5th, and it was race 1, round 1, and we went through turn 1, the big dip, and up into turn 2. And one of the guys right down the back of the field must have had his brake bias wound all the way back, like literally like 80% back, which is just crazy. And I remember he came and turned, like the rear's locked up, and he went through the infield and nailed me in the door. It cost like $90,000 worth of damage to the car. And I probably didn't appreciate it at the time, but my dad didn't sleep that night because he's going, how are we going to do it? Anyway, we got through the year, which was...
I was just going to ask you, like, he was saying to you, like, in all those period back at Wanneroo, and he was saying, don't crash the car, don't crash it. And then you do crash it at Malala, and I can only imagine he would be worrying himself to sleep. How am I going to pay for it? Even probably you were wondering how you're going to pay for it.
Well, I guess, look, 100%. And as I said, I probably didn't appreciate, I've appreciated a lot more now that, you try to protect me from a lot of it, because at the end of the day, you're there to try and forge a career. You don't want to be caught up in things to hold you back. And he probably didn't let it on. And I now, a bit more mature than being 16 and 17, can look back and go, I saw a couple of signs there where, he had a couple of bags under his eyes because he didn't sleep, and he's trying to figure out how this is all going to work. And he got me through the year. And the worst bit it wasn't my fault. I literally was going through turn 2, made a good start. I made up a position. We're all good. And then someone just nails me in the door. And you're just like, so he was also conflicted going, well, it wasn't you, but at the same time, we got to pay the bill. And that was hard. It was a lot of sacrifice from my father through karting as well. Like we did it as a father-son bonding thing. It was only just so we could have a relationship, and it turned out there was a bit of talent, and he parked his go-karts to concentrate on me racing to get the results. So through my whole career, even right up to the end there was a lot of sacrifice from my father to keep me going, to get me started, to do everything. And there is no way that I'd be anywhere near here if it wasn't for him. So genuinely, I literally owe him. Anything that's happened is because of him. And we've done it together the whole way. And that was a really tough year because it was it wasn't really free to air. It was on the old ITV stuff. And, sponsors were doing it almost out of charity. So you couldn't really go do too much, but the cost of the car was so great. So that was a really, really tough year. For a lot of reasons. We were on the podium, so we had some really good results. It was really unique. It was a really, it's 12 years ago now. Wow.
You probably have gone back and think, have I aged that much in that time? It's crazy to and also not forgetting you also had Speedweek TV coverage back in the day too on SBS, so that did help you a little bit, but nothing like what you were doing now with the Utes, where you had the mainstream coverage, or you had Fox Sports, and a very different time to try and get the sponsorship in. And I guess it was a hard slog, even before Auto One came along.
100%, because, and that really shaped my career from then was, well, hey, we can't do that again. And funny enough, as you mentioned with Auto One, there was an opportunity. They were changing the wild card Ute where I did the Barbagallo one. They had like Tim Blanchard, Warren Luff, Jason Bargwanna, like in every single round. And they got rid of that to go focus on one driver. And my name was actually one of the ones that got bantered around. And I was kind of lucky that they did, because it was between, I think it was me, George Mediki, Warren Luff, Tony Longhurst. And they ended up actually choosing me because I was like a young up-and-comer that they could hopefully just kind of hitch their wagon to, which I was really thankful they did, because obviously they, off with stiff competition there with some really quite good names in motorsport, that kind of, I guess, shaped what was the rest of my racing career, because it was a commercially good category. The racing was tough. It had all the big billing, and they decided to help me through, which was really, really cool. And in 2013, that's what caught the eye of Erebus was, the results weren't the best. It was my first year seeing the tracks, my first year in the Utes, all of that. But I decided to really get amongst the fans and try and engage with fans and try to really, I'd set up my own little poster and trestle table and just start saying hi to kids and signing an autograph and all that kind of stuff. And that's what actually caught the eye of Betty and Barry and Ryan Madison back in the day when he was involved with the whole program there. And obviously one thing led to the next. And the year after, even though my results weren't the best, I ended up racing for Erebus Motorsport, which was just the biggest eye-opening experience a young kid can have, is getting involved with the V8 Supercar team. That was huge and taught me a lot.
When that opportunity came along with Erebus Motorsport, you obviously had a lot of good people behind you in terms of Betty Klemenko, Barry Ryan Madison, who of course was part of the team initially, but you also had, I guess, the involvement of Terry Wyhoon, who went on to become the feeder team for Erebus, and that relationship has been ongoing for a very long time. But how did you learn from those people when you started your Super 2 journey?
Look, my original journey, so when I was in 2015 with Utes, Barry went and introduced me to Jimmy Stone, Matt Stone, and all of those guys. And it's actually quite funny. On my wall, I was a massive Russell Ingall fan way back in the day, right? And I've actually got a framed limited edition, I think it's one of 39, framed shirt up on my wall. And on the collar of that shirt, Matt Stone's name tag is actually on it.
No way.
100%. So when I actually signed for Matt Stone Racing, I'm like, you're actually kidding me. It was like Stephen Richards' shirt 2.0. I'm racing for the guy who's been on my wall since I was like 8. Like, just incredible. And then so Erebus introduced me to them, and obviously raced there for a couple of years. And at the end of 2017, Barry called me and said, hey, look, we're going to link up with Image Racing. And the whole Image Racing thing actually started when I was back in the Utes in 2014, because Terry Wyhoon had a V8 Ute as well. And that was Jesse Dixon, the Heyman Reese, and then me in the Auto 1 car. And I was Erebus. And even though Erebus were preparing both Utes, Terry actually owned the other Ute. So they got a really good relationship there. And then it all came back together in 2018, where Terry from Image Racing bought Davey Reynolds' old Super 2 car. Supercar, and then made it a Super 2 car, the VF car that I raced in 2018. And it kind of not rekindled my relationship with Erebus, because it was always kind of there, but brought it back to the forefront where they were helping me a little bit with engineering. And it was a slow starting relationship. It was primarily with Image. And then Erebus, as the year went on, actually got closer and closer with the project. So, look, Betty's always been around and she's been absolutely fantastic. They gave me my first opportunity to drive a V8 supercar and do hot laps in 2015 for some of their clients at 3 different tracks. I drove their SLS at test days, did a lot with them. And then obviously in 2018, I was racing the Image Racing car, but then I started doing the driver development days for them. And there was a lot that just picked up, and it was really, really good to get those kind of opportunities, sports scientists and physios and all of this kind of stuff. I got the rub off on. So it was really, it was really, really good. It was a great relationship, because without them starting in V8 Utes and creating a team for me to be in V8 Utes, and then ironically, the year after, my teammate Craig Dontis is now my boss. Without any of that, I probably wouldn't be or get to where I got to or be where I am now. So they played a massive role, where driver development academies were not really the done thing. Obviously Walkinshaw have got them, and everyone's got one these days. It wasn't a big thing back then. Erebus was really the pioneer of it.
What was it like to drive some of the cars in that early era of Erebus? Because they had the Mercedes AMG C60 or E63s, I'm sorry, which was the beginning of the car of the future era. And obviously we know that didn't end as well as everyone had hoped it would be. But what were those cars like to drive? Because I just love the engine sound. That engine note was just, so different to any other supercar that we've seen in the past. And the cars looked really good. They had a few wins behind them. But what were they like to drive?
They were so cool. Look, the biggest problem with them is that they lacked a little bit of mid-range. So like places like Sandown, they just didn't have the punch through the middle. They were good off the corner. They were good up top, but they lacked in the middle. And obviously that's really where everything is. So internally, mega car to drive. Like, just they sounded so good. They sounded grunty from the inside, from the outside. They were actually just so cool. The steering wheel was awesome. It felt like you're in a little F1 car, because it wasn't a complete wheel. It was just the outside. I loved every moment. And funny enough, the first laps that I ever drove with it, I took my dad on a hot lap. So that was really, really special, and a memory that will stick with me forever. But then to go to different tracks and drive that, I drove it in the wet conditions. And I remember it's a ride day, and we're all on, buggered tires and all that kind of stuff. But I remember I was right behind Chaz Mostert, and I was keeping up with him in the first time in the wet. I'm going, oh, this is kind of cool. Now we're all only doing 80%, so I'm at 100%. He's at 80%, but I still thought it was cool. And it was just really, really cool. And the SLS was the same. Like, they were just such mega cars, and I was very lucky to go and be able to drive them. And going to 2016, Erebus and I were heavily considering, because I already knew that they were going to a Holden the year after. We're actually really considering putting that Mercedes, or the AMG is technically what we used to call it, the C63, into Super 2. And I was going to run, I've actually got mock-ups of, we got to the very final stages before it got pulled at Homebush. The idea got pulled at 2015 Homebush. And then Barry introduced me to Matt Stone Racing and Matt White Motorsport and all those guys, because the Erebus program wouldn't take off. So
how gutting was it for you to know that program was going to eventually happen, but then it just got pulled literally at the last moment?
It was a little bit hard, because once again, not being in motorsport and only knowing what I know, or because of the people around me, to have like a succession through to the next category all there and then it vanishes, you got to start from ground zero again and build up with another team. And I was still only in my third year of proper car racing at that time, so I didn't really know too much and didn't know too many people. So I was lucky that the Stone family were very welcoming, and it made the transition very easy. Even learning, like if we'd done it within Erebus, they knew where I was at, they knew what I could do, and they knew where I'd have to focus. But it wasn't meant to be. So once again, going back to the old go-karting thing of you learn how to learn. Well, I had to learn how to learn. And, in the old, that was the first year where Car of the Future could race against the Blueprint cars. And the Blueprint cars were just obviously nowhere near as quick. We still had a lot of top 10 results. I think my best finish, that year was 6th or 7th, and we were around 9th and 10th and 8th, quite a lot. So it was actually a really good thing in disguise. And the FG Falcon was just such a cool car to drive. It was really quite user-friendly as well. So all in all, it was definitely not a bad year, and I loved my time with Matt Stone Racing. 2017 was a lot harder, but then when you go 2018, 2019, it changed again. So it was, it was a cool time.
2019 was the watershed year for you, because you had that year with a couple of years with Matt Stone. You had obviously 2016 where you finished 13th in the Falcon, then 18th in 2017 when you drove the Commodore. But those last 2 years that you did Super 2 and leading up to your first retirement, how difficult was it to try and stay competitive, try and keep that budget, but then you realise that you had to pull the pin? What were the reasons in the lead up to that?
The 2018-2019 off season was tumultuous. So obviously we're still with Erebus. Still with Erebus and Image Racing. And Terry, the thing I love about Terry and Image, he's just such a hardcore racer. He doesn't care about anything apart from results, and he puts his heart and soul into it. I've never met anyone like him. I've got such a tremendous respect for him. I still go and visit him every time I'm at the track and Super Tour there. I absolutely go say hi, and he comes over and says hello. And he made it a hard time really easy, because we had pretty much already gone down the path of planning with Auto One, and until a couple of days out from Christmas, I got the worst Christmas present where they're going, we're not involved in next year, after we'd already planned it all and been a lot of communication. So we're going, oh, you joke. Like that was such a sucker punch. It was a gut-wrenching thing. Like the one sponsor on one side, tremendously grateful, because I wouldn't have gotten where I did without Auto One. But on the other end, it was a little bit of a sour taste, because if that was the decision, we had already planned retro round liveries. We'd already done everything and ticked off all the lists, literally done everything. And it was an assumed thing based on everything else that we would just naturally proceed. So Dad and I spent 2 weeks touring the country at the end of January, and had to go raise all this money from nothing. And we literally got there 8 days out from Adelaide. We tested 6 days out from Adelaide, and then we raced at Adelaide. And it was just so quick in succession. And the results immediately were there. Like, we were 6th at the Adelaide 500. And we went through that year. We almost stepped on the podium a fair few times. And it was really, really good. And then we got to the end of the year, and I guess the results, we were doing it on a budget that obviously wasn't like the top teams, the Triple Eights, the Tickfords, the Nissan Altimas, the Matt White Motorsport. And, we did it really, really well. And I guess it showed me internally, we could do it, just maybe not in the right circumstance. And that's not taking anything away from Terry. That's just literally dollars and cents. So got to the end of the year, and I guess I don't really ever feel like I need to prove anything to anyone, as long as I can prove it to myself. And I proved to myself, what I guess we were capable of, what the car was. I think we maximized a lot of what we had, and got to the end of the year, and we sat back and were like, forget COVID wasn't a thing. It wasn't even on the radar of anything at that time, right? And we were already talking about code drives and all of that, because the people that needed to know knew what we were doing and how it was going. And I made a bit of a flip of the script decision to actually stop and retire. And I guess once I proved it to myself, I guess that was enough and made me comfortable within myself. And I guess the hardest thing about retiring was all the little things that you can't do anymore. You probably can't, you're not in the limelight anymore. So you can't, I love being an ambassador for Princess Margaret Hospital back in the day, that's now gone in Perth, but they saved my life when I was 10 days old. So I always felt like it was my duty to give back a little bit. I remember a ride day where, a fan came and watched and brought her little son across, and it was his birthday, and we caught wind of it, and there was a birthday cake, and we stopped the whole pit garage, my team, my sponsors, we all sung him happy birthday. And all those special moments that you just can't do in normal life of selling air fresheners at Auto on Morley, like you can't just do that.
Yeah.
And that was a really emotional time, and it was really special, the amount of things that we got to do along the way that probably can't replicate anymore. And that was quite an emotional thing. I came home from work, Dad was on the couch, and said to him, I was like, hey Dad, saw the announcement that I put up? And he said yeah. And even just recounting it, I almost get a little bit emotional because I can feel everything that was in that moment. It was the first time I've seen my dad cry. He's quite a stoic kind of guy. Nothing ever bothers him. Nothing stresses him. And he broke down, and then my mum broke down, and my sister broke down, and I was the last domino to fall. And it was really, really special. So that retirement decision was not easy, because my whole life since I was 7, and we touched on that before, was motorsport. I changed schools, I changed jobs, went to uni, different friends, whatever. But the one constant I had was motorsport. It was the only thing I knew how to do well. And for that to stop was a really hard decision, but as well, it was one that I was very thankful for, because not only was I quite at peace with it afterwards, it gave me back a sense of freedom. I missed people having kids and marriages and all this kind of stuff, because of the way racing and doing appearances. And because it was very much a marketing driven program that we had to run, and we weren't able to contribute, it wasn't just, you just race and then go home. I was away, I think in that 2018 and 2019 year, each year I averaged 110 flights from WA, and it killed me. So it gave me a sense of relief and a sense of freedom I never had before. And when all these lockdowns were happening with COVID, I'm sitting there going, this ain't that bad. I'm free. I can go home and have a beer tonight. I can go see my friends within reason, with all the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff going on. It was actually really freeing. So it was very hard. It was very emotional. And I struggled probably for 2-3 months, but it was also really, really good. And obviously, I never thought I'd see a race car again. I went back and inquired in racing and go-karts and stuff like that, but that never really took off. And then, still don't know why the hell. I've never asked Craig, why the hell out of everybody that you could have called back in 2022, why the hell did you call me? I should have been the last person on your mind.
But it was the itch that had to be scratched, and it happened the way it did. And of course, we now see you got the Super Utes title, which I can still see by the smile on your face that it's a sense of accomplishment. So I love the fact your family have had a very strong interest in your career, but I also feel that your dad's passion, not just for your racing, but he has a passion for cars, and it's in an infectious scene that's carried off onto you. Where did the love of cars come from you? I'd say obviously from your dad, but where were the other circumstances?
Yeah, look, it was. I think I was conditioned. I was brainwashed as a kid.
Yes.
He's obviously a mechanic. He's been in automotive his whole life. And I think growing up, like my earliest memories of anything to do with motorsport was literally watching Formula Ford on TV, like it's like 4 and 5 and 6. And naturally, that started to just pique my interest. So Dad really wanted a close relationship with me, and that's where it all kind of just came from. So I remember I was in year 1 and 2 at the time, so I was 6 and 7, and we had a little thing because I was a little bit of a class clown, a bit of a mischievous kind of kid.
I wonder why.
I still don't know if I got that from mum or dad, but yeah, so pretty much what there was back in the day when there were blackboards, not whiteboards, blackboards, the whole class would have their name on the board. And if you talked during class or you're a bit of a naughty kid, you got your name rubbed off. So Dad and I went go-karting once in a high go-kart place, and it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And I loved it, and he loved it, and we kind of went back a couple of times. Then he tied it to my schooling. So he said, if your name is on the board by the end of the week, we will go. And if it's rubbed off, we won't go. So I kept it on for the first week, and we went. It was awesome. And then the very next week, I was a bit of a class clown, a bit of a chatterbox, whatnot, and it got rubbed off. And my mum told my dad, and I told my dad a lie. And I was like, no, it's on there, Dad. It's all good. He said, no, it's not. I already know. And my heart was broken, and I was like crying and crying and crying. He said, and because you lied, we're not going back next week. I was like, oh, no. So anyway, so I kind of learned conditioned to tie, make sure I'm good at school so we can do this. And anyway, we kind of kept going a little bit, and it got to the point where Dad said, okay, well, you're doing half okay. And I was actually passing adults and all this kind of stuff. It was actually really, really cool. And he said, okay, if you do this lap time, I will buy you your first go-kart. It took me about 7 or 8 times after that. So it was not instantaneously. But I upheld my end of the bargain, and so did he. So we bought a go-kart and then started racing around WA and started racing around Australia. And obviously Daniel Ricciardo hails from Perth, and he's only a couple of years older than me. And it was very much Joe, his dad, and him. So we started traveling, to Adelaide and started racing around together, and just kind of father and son. So his passion for cars, he's now he's fully retired. He's got a bit of a car collection himself where he's building engines and doing stuff. He just bought a factory unit where he's just done epoxy flooring this week, painted the walls. He's building a little retaining wall, putting in a hoist, and he's absolutely car mad. And his passion for cars, and then obviously motorsport, just kept going and going. And our relationship and how strong and close it is a testament to I guess the way and the reason why it all happened in the first place. If I didn't have any talent or any passion to go any further, we would have just done it at club level, and we would have been thick as thieves and mission accomplished in his eyes. And me being grateful for that, it was just by pure luck that I remember my first year of karting, it was 2003. I had a severely underpowered engine. I was coming like second last in Larts in a class that was used to be called midgets, now called cadets for political reasons. And I came from last to fourth when it rained. And I'd never raced in the rain before, but because the engine was like the lack of power was taken out of the equation, Dad stood back and went, oh, Jesus, okay, rightio. And then when it went dry, obviously the lack of power went all the way back, but we rebuilt the engine and boom, we're right up the pointy end, and then that just kept kind of going through. So yeah, it was really lucky that I guess my dad wanted to do something together, and it just happened to be motorsport, and I had a little bit of talent, and now, I'm really lucky that like at the Adelaide 500, I had my mum and dad, I had my girlfriend there. My auntie, my uncle have come to a couple of rounds now. And then my two best friends that moved back from the UK at the start of the year, that are actually my partner's best friends, they were there as well. They took the trip, and to be able to share it with such a great bunch of people is something I'm really thankful for, because for me, this part of it is definitely about the destination, but it's so much more about the journey and the people I'm sharing it with. And, that goes with a lot of my followers, it goes with my family, that goes with like Craig. I've got such a good close friend in I guess my boss, Craig, and he came back at the Adelaide 500, and to spend time with him and getting him up to speed. And he just drove so phenomenally at the Adelaide 500, and to share in his achievement of coming top 4 in such a tough category when he hasn't raced since I came back in, like, what a weapon. So to be able to share it with so many people, it's truly special. And I think that's equally as important as any on-track result as well.
Just one more question before we move on. Daniel Ricciardo, you raced against him in your early years. Do you still shake your head at how far he went in his career to go all the way to Europe, to go all the way to Formula One, be a multiple race winner? The success that he had, and he's now built a brand for himself. Do you sometimes look back with great fondness that you were able to say, hey, I raced against Daniel Ricciardo and he did all right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, it's really cool. Like go back to those days. You'd never think anyone from Perth would go to supercars, let alone F1. And no one would have picked Daniel. No one would have picked anyone to do anything. And we had some really cool drivers back in the day. But I guess knowing his story of how he got there with the Red Bull evaluation days and all of the stepping stones, he did well in karts, but probably wasn't like next level. But then when he got to Asia and Europe, something really jumped out and changed, and he just adapted into such a mature, such a fast driver. Like you go back to the early Red Bull days and his braking maneuvers and all that kind of stuff. That's what changed in his junior career. And then Red Bull obviously afforded him the opportunity. Then he went to a Spaniard racing team with the Red Bull connection all there. And then obviously, Toro Rosso and all the way through. Super cool. And couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And one of the coolest things is I remember, as a kid, we at Wanneroo Kart Track, Wanneroo Raceway, where all the race cars are, obviously they're quite close in proximity. And there was a hole cut in the fence at the back of the go-kart track, and you could escape under there, go through the bushes and get to turn 6. And I remember a bunch of us, so me, Daniel, a couple of guys, Blake Mills, Pracey, all of these guys, we used to, after racing, before presentations of trophies, we used to sneak back up and up to the top of turn 6 and watch all the Formula Fords and saloon cars, sports sedans go round and round and round. And we all just were in awe of how cool that was. We're totally not meant to be there because no spectators are allowed over that edge of the circuit. But some really cool memories. And one thing that I'll definitely say about Daniel, what you see on TV is absolutely who he was. We were an ambassador of MNDI, a charity, go back 6-7 years ago together. And, we caught up and he knew everything about what I've been racing, which is really cool. And we catch up very intermittently, but who you see on TV, who you see at the track is exactly the way he is in his own life, the exact way he was growing up. Just a cheeky, happy-go-lucky guy with some cool racing talent. He's just a good bloke, and you could never take away anything he's done. And, obviously, his racing career ended in a different way. And, with McLaren and the way it ended in his second stint with the junior Red Bull team, he is a supremely good ambassador for anyone. He's just a good guy, and he's a bloody good driver. So, definitely fond memories. And it's also really cool to see that he hasn't changed with all the success he's had in his career.
I love how he swears as well. It's just so refreshing when you watch Drive to Survive. Like he has no filter. I love that about Dan.
Oh, 100%. And it's just so refreshing to see someone that's not got that, whitewashed kind of personality, that really corporate kind of thing. He's just out there just having a bit of fun, and everyone loves it. And that's what sport needs all over, where it's become a bit kind of sanitized a little bit. We need those characters to break through at all levels of motorsport and sport in general.
This is the Motor Dream Podcast.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
We know you love cars. It's obviously been a passion of yours as a career as well, being a professional racing driver and now a champion racing driver for that matter. I want to delve a little deeper into your, I guess, passion for cars itself. So I want to go back and ask a few questions. First off, the first car that you drove.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so hopefully there's like a statute of limitations here, but I remember
I'm sure.
my family's old VT Calais. We're always a Holden family, so sorry, Ford lovers.
You've just offended me. Sorry.
I guess this is where it's cut.
Bye. I'm joking.
I remember I used to go to the deli. It was just up the road back when on Saturday nights, Mum and Dad would get the newspaper for Sunday morning. So what was that? It was like 1990. I'd have to be like 99, 2000, right?
Wow.
Yeah, going back a while. And I used to sit on Dad's lap and steer the car home. Might have been on main or less main roads or, not on roads at all, depending on what, police person or lawyer is watching this. I used to steer the car. And I remember I made the foul mistake of being at the checkout and I went, Daddy, can I drive the car home? And Dad looked at me, obviously being kind of outed by a truthful young kid. He's like, no, that's bloody ridiculous. You're too young. And then we went back and I proceeded to jump on his lap and he would work the pedals and I'd work the steering wheel. It'll be good.
So
and we'd go back home.
It's so cool.
It was only like a 2-minute trip home, but that was the first kind of car that I ever actually drove. And we never had an opportunity to go bush bashing on a farm or anything like that. But then it was literally that, go-karts, and then I'd not even got my license yet. I'm in a saloon car. So that was literally it.
Okay, after that escapade, what was the first car that you owned once you got your license?
I had a 2002 Subaru Impreza. It was a Christmas present that my parents got. They gave me. They spent half and I contributed half. I didn't have access to my bank account back then, so they bought it with my money and their money. Big sound system, big loud exhaust, no power at all because Dad wouldn't trust me with a turbo. And you could hear me coming. It was really cool because I would be coming into like the estate that we live in, and Mum knew I was coming with how loud the exhaust was. So she'd unlock the door. I never had to unlock the door. It was awesome.
The engine didn't break down on you?
I overheated it. A blew head gasket, and those things, obviously, they're known for blowing head gaskets.
Yes.
I tipped in a bloody bit of cargo seal up straight in, and that kind of sealed it up, and it kept going for a while until I decided to sell it, and then got a VW Golf GTI. So, but I love that first car. I miss the sound those cars kind of make. It's very unique.
That box of four is just something else, and it's very indistinguishable to everything else. What about the first road trip that you remember? I'm sure there's plenty of road trips you've done with your dad and with your family in your racing career, but what was the first road trip that you remember in your lifetime?
I reckon 2004 we raced the state championships up at Geraldton, so north in WA. And Mum, Dad, sister all went. It was my first championship where I was actually like up there. I was fighting for wins. And we went with another family, the Rochford family, so Daniel and Luke Rochford. And Daniel races with Nick Percat in his J&D outfit. And they were very good family friends with us when they lived in WA. And it was a great road trip on the way up. On the way down, we got to the final and I was actually winning. And Luke came into turn one and hit the curb and spun me out. And it was back in the day with no clutches. So I DNF'd the race and it was a dead man's final. So whoever won the final won the state championship. And it was the second last lap. Made this move that was never going to stick, turned me around. And it was a very, very long drive home because he ended up winning the blue plate, the state championship, and I ended up crashing out because of him. And it was a very long trip on the way back home. So that was not the most iconic, but definitely the first one that I really remember.
Was there much talking on that trip home?
No. And it was the days before iPods, and it was like the days of the Walkman, and I didn't have a Walkman. So I'm just sitting there in silence, listening to like the engine and the trees go by. Like it was a very long 4.5 hour trip.
Oh, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine how awkward it would have been. Do you remember the first time you changed a tyre?
On a go-kart, yes. On a road car, yes, I do actually. It was on that O2 Impreza.
Yeah. And
I had to change the brake pads at the back of my dad's store. I jacked my car up and I undid it and I changed all 4 pads and rotors in the back loading dock of my dad's store. So Wasn't changing a tire, but it was close enough. So I'll take that.
We'll take it. That's a good one. What about on a road trip? Like if you're going to like a Super Utes meet or Supercars meet, what's the kind of music you like to listen to, you and your partner?
That's a really hard one because I've just gone on Spotify and I've just got like my most liked songs and I just keep adding to it. So I think there's like something like 1,900 songs on this playlist and it's just on shuffle. So it's like literally anything I've ever liked ever. So it's a really crappy answer, but there's everything from like Savage Garden to FIFA songs to literally you name it, to like my gym to pumping up songs. And I guess I use music a lot to remember things. So I'll know exactly, like on my UK trip, exactly what I was listening to. So when that song comes on, I think about, memories. I do get a bit sentimental like that. So I don't actually have a set playlist or a set song. I just have literally everything put on shuffle, and then it just makes me remember, hey, I remember that race meeting in 2016 at, Townsville, and I remember Ipswich 2019, all by the song that just comes on. I love that.
What about eating in cars? Yes or no?
I don't mind. I don't mind as long as you clean up your mess and take your rubbish off.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. No feet on dash, though. No feet on dash.
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't know why people do it. I just don't understand. It's just dangerous, first and foremost. So, yeah, I'm not 100%. A fan of it. What about the best car you've owned? Is it the GDI Golf?
I love I've got a VW Amarok, so I'm a very VW kind of guy. I had a Sirocco last. Ooh. I've only ever had 4 cars. I'd say the GTI was bulletproof. Like, I treated that thing, being a poor uni student, I didn't really service it too well. It was a good looking car. It went fast, and that's it. The Sirocco I had afterwards blew an engine, and that cost me a lot of money, so I didn't really like that. And I love my Amarok. I feel like a grandpa. I've got full sheepskin seats. I'm the laziest grandpa driver you've ever met. And
you've gone Dick Johnson Bathurst 84 there, like the Group C, the Green Star Falcon with the sheepskin covers. Like, what on earth?
My mates just go, Adam, you are I can't be seen with you. So it gets me out of being the designated driver. I love it.
I'm sure. What about the worst car? Of the 4 cars that you've owned, which is the worst?
The love-hate relationship with that Sirocco, I loved it. Big sound system. I think I put in about 12 grand into the sound system, 15 grand into the engine. It was like my first little bit of freedom. And then I remember the car got jacked up. I needed to just replace the clutch. And it had like crank end float. And they're literally moving the crankshaft like that. And I'm going, I didn't feel anything. Like I know when an engine's about to detonate, I've had it happen to me in a race car. And I had no sign that this thing was going to detonate. So I bought the car for 20. I sold it for 27. I spent about 25. So
you made no money out of that whatsoever.
God. So my most loved and my most hated car probably was the Sirocco, but net love was probably that GTI.
Yeah, totally understand. Okay, you obviously work in the automotive industry, obviously as a franchisee for Auto One. I want to ask, what's the one thing you wish people would appreciate more in the modern day car?
It's a really hard thing. So from my side on the automotive industry, the industry's changed so much. The rise of EV, how good cars really are these days. You go back just 15 years ago, the features you get in a Mercedes, a Lexus, a Toyota, like you just wouldn't have any of that back, 2005. From my side in the automotive industry, supplying parts and understanding how to put together a sound system, understanding how to do all this, there's so many more factors that it's so specialized that you really need a lot of knowledge. And, that's where your good automotive stores are better from your other automotive stores because they've got knowledge. And knowledge takes so long to get because there is not just a training manual you do because every car is so different. And then on the other side, in motorsport and its relation to cars these days, is we've got this thing about relevance to the car market. And I think that's just a load of crock. I really do, because people are getting into F1 so much more these days. You can't drive an F1 on the street. That's got no road relevance whatsoever. Yet in a lot of categories, we push for this road-going relevance, like you can win on Sunday and buy on Monday. And I just don't think that's applicable. It's an entertainment. It's a sport. Leave it at that. So you've got a lot of multifaceted things. And I think where the automotive industry and our tastes and preference and how that's being shaped and how the automotive industry is shaped based off of what we want, it's a very unique thing that from about 2017 onwards, we see, the death of V8s in Holden and Ford, and we all go up in arms about, geez, I really, it's sad that they're not producing in Australia anymore, and we don't have V8s on the road anymore. Well, we're really the reason. I've never owned a V8 in my whole life. I still find it sad, but I'm partially at fault too. So it's a really unique time that we're in right now is the way that it's changing. And I think people probably don't appreciate at manufacturer level, at base level, at consumer level, what's actually happening everywhere.
That's a really good answer. I like that. Thank you for explaining that. I think it was, quite interesting. What about pet peeves, like stickers on cars and your spoilers, your aftermarket spoilers and your air fresheners? Yes or no? Yeah. Is there anything that you like, don't like, given you sell them?
That's why I've got to be so careful.
Yes, exactly.
If anyone listens to this and then goes, oh, geez, he says he really likes it, but he's just gone out and outed it on this podcast, I've got no leg to stand on. Fuzzy dice.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad someone... Yeah, I don't... Why? Seriously, it's a thing from the 80s. Just leave it alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. But you know what? They just came on special for $4.95 at Auto One Mall. It's
oh dear. Okay, I'm leaving that one alone. All right. Do you name your cars, and what are your thoughts on those that do? We know that Paul Morris names his race cars, so are you one of those people?
Do you know what? I always was, and it's just dawned on me as you asked that. I've not named any of my new V8 SuperUtes since I've been back in motorsport. It's just been the glass shattering effect. They've always had names, and I'm not very creative, right? So all of my cars have been called Eve. Eve 1, Eve 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, because Adam and Eve. It just goes, right?
Yes.
But I just realized I've not named these two. So I'm going to say yes and no. Because maybe I'm out of touch with what I used to do. So, but yeah, originally 100% always did my 2016 car, and you should never rename it. But because mine was like a different one, I had Scarlet in 2016 with Matt Stone Racing and stuff like that. So 100%, I'm a big fan of the names. It gives a good personality. And when you're actually driving a car as a driver, you feel like you have a connection with the car, right? And even though it's literally bolts and nuts and moving parts and all this kind of stuff, you genuinely think of a car as an extension of your own body, and whether you gel with it or don't. I didn't gel with my 2017 Matt Stone Racing Commodore. I hated it. It just didn't have characteristics that I loved. But then I went to the Image Racing one, and I loved it again. I love that 2016 car. So giving it a name personifies it, in my opinion, and you learn to love characteristics or hate it. And it's really like my car this year was just phenomenal. I loved every bit of it. I really need to name it to give it something. So, if anyone's got any ideas, please reach out.
I love it. Well, I'm sure they'll say something in the feeds, in the social feeds. One final question before we move on to the Dream Garage. The best memory you've had in a car, would it be when you crossed the line in Adelaide to win the championship, or is it something else that stands out?
I've got two. My first one was in 2006 back in karting. I hadn't won a thing all year. I'd moved up to juniors a little bit early. So I was racing against 16-year-olds when I was only 12. And I hadn't won a thing all year. Went to Bunbury. Dad and I stayed in a hotel. We were sleeping in the same bed because there were just no accommodation. So we were in a big king-size bed. And we got to the track out of our own little trailer, and we had bigger teams out of trucks and all that stuff. And we put on pole. We won Heat 1, Heat 2, Heat 3, and the final. It was my first day championship event. And I remember for the I think it was about a 2.5 hour or 2 3/4 hour trip on the way home, all we played was We Are the Champions by Queen. And that is just so etched in my mind that whole weekend, because not we shouldn't have won, but we weren't expecting to win. It was me and Dad up against bigger teams, and everything just went perfectly. I couldn't believe we pulled it. I couldn't believe we won it. And it was the first of a couple. And it was really special, just the whole moment. And the only parallel I've really got to that is literally what we just had at Adelaide, was just the way we stuck it together, where I felt like I was in the zone in the car. We just had pace to burn, and just how emotional it really was. Like I was a blithering mess coming out of that car. I was crying on the whole in lap. My dad came to me, and jumping with joy, and he even jumped on Spotify, and he can't really use Spotify too well. And he jumped on Spotify, found that song, and played it again. And really, it was really special. Like I just, I'm a bit lost in words, but those two moments I'll absolutely take to the grave. And my dad was there for both of them. We had the repeater song. It was just so special. So definitely both of those weekends, maybe the end of it was a bit heightened, but both weekends were just so special. The whole weekend, all the way through, felt the same in karting and in V8 SuperUtes. So yeah, really, really, really cool.
Adam Marjoram, this is the reason why we got you on to the podcast. You wake up one morning and you get a message in your text, and it says check your bank balance, and you think, oh come on, this is ridiculous. This is a scam, right?
Yeah.
You do it. Curiosity pikes. You go and open the app in your phone, and you find out your bank balance has gone to infinity levels. You've become an instant billionaire. You don't know how or why you got this money, but you've become an instant billionaire. You then get an email, and it says you can buy any car, bike, or machine that you want, but you're only allowed 3 in your dream garage. So with that in mind, what is the first car, bike, or machine you would like to have in your dream garage?
That's really hard. I would have to say an F40.
Oh, of course, a Ferrari F40, yes.
That's just iconic. In every level of everything, I don't reckon you can get much better than that. That would absolutely be number one. Infinity everything, F40, classic, just childhood car, posters on my wall, everything. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. But which one would you get? Would you get the standard version or the LM version or the GTE race version? There's a couple different versions out there.
There is. Funny enough, this is going to sound really dumb. I'd actually go the standard.
Really?
I want the poster boy spec one that I grew up with.
Yeah.
I feel like the other ones are cooler, don't get me wrong, but the one that I had hang on my wall was just the standard one, and I feel like that's the childhood, right?
Absolutely. Well, there were about 1,311 produced between 1987 to 92, so it had a lot of relevance. Still has relevance now. And obviously, almost a 3-litre, 2.9-litre twin turbocharged V8, the Tipo F120A V8, producing almost 500 brake horsepower, about 471, and with a 5-speed gearbox. I mean, how can you not love that car? It is just the epitome of what a Ferrari is all about. I still think it does to this day.
Yeah.
So, and it's the last. I think it was the last car that Enzo Ferrari overlooked before he died. So, there's something very, very special about that car.
Absolutely, and I mean, look, I've never driven one, so if anyone has one,
I know. Owen Kelly, his dad owns Chaz Kelly owns a Ferrari F40. I think he crashed one in the very first Targa Tasmania years ago. I shouldn't have brought that up, but it did happen. It did happen. He crashed it into the trees in the Tasmanian forest during the inaugural Targa Tasmania. I don't think Chaz will ever live that down, but I think he still owns that car.
Wow. I think Daniel Ricciardo's old man Joe has one here in WA as well. Bought in Italy and actually drove it through Italy and put it on a ship back home, only for it not to be allowed to be registered in WA.
Well, you can't, right? Well, it's not possible. So actually, exactly. given how historic the car is now, surely they can do it.
You'd think so on one of the classic plates or something like that.
Yeah.
But from my knowledge, and I must admit I'm probably not brushed up because a young kid over here probably doesn't have enough money to have a classic.
No, that's true. That's true.
I need a couple more UARSA batteries pole position awards to get there.
Philippa, you're listening? Yeah. Pull your magic out. Help us out here. Help a champion out.
Can we add a 0 to the end of the check, please?
All right. The second car you would have in your dream garage?
I'd go on McLaren Senna.
Oh, I think you're the first person that's mentioned the McLaren Senna.
They're cool. They're cool.
I actually saw the one that's at the Ben Motorsport Park.
Yes.
And that is just, oh my goodness, that is incredible. So the first one was built in 2018. It's a limited production model done by McLaren Automotive. And so they did the first one in 2018, and they're still building them. So 500 centers have been made. The GTR version, there was 75 of them made. The LM version of this center, 35 of them were made. And then the GTR LM model, which I think was built for World Endurance Championship, 5 of them were made. So I could look at it any time, and it just looks... It probably is just as iconic as the Ferrari F40. They just look that good.
Yeah, I feel like going forward in time, I actually feel like that will almost feel like an F40. Like in 20 odd years' time, I feel like that will be like an F40 because they are obscene machines. Like obviously, the League Collection's got one here in WA, the Bend, and it was actually at the Bend that I fell in love with it. I was there for a Lexus day, and I got to see it in the flesh, and I'm going, man, this is just obscene. It's like the most race car.
Oh, totally.
Wow, right? Oh man, I'd love to drive one of those. I think that'd be really cool. Like on a racetrack, that would be one of the most elite things that I think you could actually do. Ever, apart from driving an F1 car.
Oh, of course. It's a 4-litre V8, McLaren M80 840 TR V8, twin turbocharged, producing almost 800 brake horsepower. So it's double what the Ferrari F40 is. 7-speed dual clutch semi-automatic. Yeah, if I had the money, I'd have the McLaren. I really would. As much as I love the Ferrari F40, I think the McLaren and the Senna name, that's iconic in itself. I think there'd be a waiting list just to get one because they're built in limited numbers every year. So, yeah.
And that's what keeps its value.
Exactly. I agree with that. All right, lastly, the third machine.
It's a hard one. Because so with this answer, right? So you can either go down the real historic route, you can go down the flashy route, go Lamborghini or something like that. I'm going to make a little short list. That's a bit of a cheating thing.
All right. We'll allow it. We can allow some honourable mentions. Go on.
Honourable mentions. I would go Lamborghini Diablo.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Grew up racing it on Need for Speed. Way back in the day where, what was that, Hot Pursuit 3 or something on PC and all of those kind of days. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. So for me, that's like a bit of a childhood kind of car. Mm-hmm. The Lexus LFA, that was awesome. So I was lucky enough to drive that at the Bend when I saw the McLaren Centre. And those things scream like an F1 car. And obviously, I think the story behind it and the rarity and the cost of production and the way it changed over through the 2000s, I really, really loved that. And then I'd probably say something like a Model T or something really, like really, really different, just to park it up in the shed and go, I've got one of those. Like, that's cool. Something really, really different. So that's why I was like, it's a little bit of a mix. And I feel like they're all equal for very different reasons, for childhood or for literally how they drive, or, because you can all go say like, brand new GT3 RS or brand new.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna make this executive decision here. We're putting the Model T in as the third car, with the other two being honourable mentions. That is like the first classic, like proper classic in the Dream Garage, which is fantastic. So Model T is obviously the first mass-produced car, and it went for almost 20 years. First built in 1908, right through to May 1927. It was built as an economy car, two-speed gearbox with an inline-4 of almost 3 litres, and it was just one of those cars that became the most accessible car that you could buy for the common man back in that time. It's it's iconic just as much as it looks magnificent even now. So that's a good choice.
Yeah, something different. Got to change it up.
Absolutely. I like that. And I think it's a great dream garage. So McLaren Senna, Ferrari F40, and a Model T40. I mean, you could not get opposite ends of the spectrum like that one there, but that is really cool. And that's a great way to end what has been a very entertaining chat. I absolutely have enjoyed it, and congratulations once again on winning the championship in the Super Utes. I know you'll be back next year to defend your title and hopefully get another one under your belt, but whatever happens, if you get it to drive a supercar or do Carrera Cup, and I'm sure that's still a goal of yours at some point somewhere along the line, whatever you do, we wish you all the very best and good luck in 2025.
Thank you so much, mate. It's been a whirlwind, and I'm really looking forward to next year and hopefully defending the title and seeing what else the year has. And thank you for having me on, mate. It's been a really cool chat, and I've really enjoyed myself. So thank you, man.
No worries. Thank you very much, and good luck in 2025.
Thank you.
What an incredibly talented person Adam Marjoram is. Just by listening to some of his stories throughout his professional career was just awe-inspiring. And the fact that he stepped back into the sport after a few years away and he went on to win a much-deserved championship after years of persistence just proves that anything is possible. And it's easy to see why he is a fan favourite at most of the Supercars rounds. He always makes sure that he gets to say hello to his fans at every meet and greet session, and his cheerful demeanour is a testament to that. We definitely wish Adam all the very best in the 2025 Tyrepower V8 SuperUtes Series, which gets underway this weekend at the thrifty Sydney 500 at Sydney Motorsport Park, supporting the Repco Supercars Championship. You can watch all the action of both the Super Utes and the Supercars exclusively on Fox Sports and KO, and you can follow the Super Utes action on all the socials as well as the website at v8superutes.com. And be sure to also follow Adam on his socials, which we put the links to in the show notes. My thanks to Adam for being so generous with his time, and an extended thank you to Philippa Gawana and the entire V8 SuperUtes team for supporting this episode of the podcast. And just quickly, we extend our congratulations to Philippa, who was our guest on episode 6. She's been recently promoted to become the category manager of the V8 SuperUtes, and we couldn't be more prouder of her smashing the glass ceiling and being a leading light of women in motorsport. If you want to follow the Motor Dream podcast, the show website is www.themotordream.com.au, where you can listen to past episodes, check on all the information of each of our guests, and also on the show itself. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram with the handle The Motor Dream, and you can also start the conversation about what your dream garage would be by using the hashtag The Motor Dream. Or better still, why not drop us a line on what your dream garage would be? Our email is themotordream@beastproductions.com.au. Lastly, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube Music. Thanks for listening to the Motor Dream podcast, and remember to please drive or ride safely out on the roads wherever you go. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for another episode, so we'll see you then. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Motor Dream podcast. This series is proudly produced by Beast Productions.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.